So years ago, actually before I studied NLP, I remember doing kind of a mental experiment, or I noticed something and then I started playing with something in my subjective experience. But I noticed that there was a particular food that I really wanted, and I'll just come right out and say it. I wanted dumplings, as I always want dumplings because they're my favorite food. And I was thinking about dumplings and how much I wanted them, and it was right when I started school, so it was going to start getting expensive if I went out and I was getting myself dumplings every day. And I was just noticing the experience of wanting them and whether or not I could have them. So that got me kind of curious, and then I started thinking about. I noticed that when it came to something that I also really liked, which was lobster. The thought of it didn't really bother me very much. And what I mean by that is if I thought about the dumplings, it's like they were right there around the corner. And if I was going to have self-control and not get them, I felt kind of bad. Like I wanted them, but I was deciding I'm not going to get them. I'm not going to spend the money on them. So, and then I was thinking about lobster because it occurred to me, here was this other thing that I wanted, maybe even wanted more, but I didn't make myself crazy with it. And what I realized is I didn't hold it as something that I should be having in that moment, or even that I wanted to. I was just like, I'm not going to have this, so I'm not going to drive myself crazy by thinking about it all day. So I thought, well, that's really interesting. They're both food. You know, this could have been, I just picked food for this illustration, but it could be anything. It could be a new pair of shoes. It could be whatever floats your boat. A new book, a new car. And I think with the dumplings, because it seemed like, well, they're right around the corner. The way that I was thinking about them was making me feel like, I really wanted them, and that I was kind of upset that I couldn't have them. And with lobster, because I just knew I wasn't going to have it, so I didn't bother thinking about it a lot. So this is an example of how you can begin to notice experiences that are very close in your subjective experience, and then actually how you can begin to change one into the other. So, and in the NLP sort of way of talking about things, we call this submodalities, which is that, you know, the way that you picture something. So I'm gonna be talking a little bit about the submodalities as well. A modality being whether it's a visual thought, auditory, or kinesthetic. And then submodality is, okay, is the picture big? Is the picture small? Is it in color? Is it in black and white? So you'll notice that as I was talking about the dumplings that were right around the corner, or the lobster, you'll notice I'm gesturing in different places, and that's because that's where I have those two pictures. When I picture the lobster, I see it over there. And when I was picturing the dumplings, they're here, and actually the picture is very close. It's like right here, and it's more, for me, it's more three-dimensional. It's, you know, I can almost taste it, is the, you know, the expression. Now, if you take two things, one that you really want, and maybe it even bothers you if you can't get it, and then something that you think about it and you're just like, I'm neutral, I'm not going to bother with that. You'll notice that the way you picture those two experiences, or the way you hold them, is a little bit different. Maybe here's another example you could look at. If you imagine maybe a shirt or a sweater that you really like and you want to go get, and then another shirt or sweater that you're just neutral about, like you don't care. If you had it, it's fine. If you don't have it, it's fine. I think you'll notice that you picture those two things in two different ways. They may be a different size. They may be in different locations in relation to your body. One may be three-dimensional and one might be flat. One might be closer to you. And then you could even picture a shirt or a sweater that you don't want. For me, not wanting something is different than being neutral. Like maybe you see a shirt and it doesn't fit you, or it's kind of ugly. That one you'll code in a different way. And then the interesting thing is, if you shift the coding of, say, the neutral one and the thing that you really want, you can actually get yourself to want the neutral one more. And you can take the one that you really want, and if you shift it to neutral, you can get yourself to want it less. You'll notice when I was talking about the dumplings, and I said they were right around the corner. It's like the picture is so close I can touch it, and the closer I brought the picture to myself, the more I wanted it. So for me, if I push it way off in the distance, it doesn't bother me as much. Now, not everyone will respond to distance, like distance as a submodality in the same way. Some people, if you move it further away, that may draw them more. But for me, in this particular instance, if I move it way off in the distance, like far enough away, then it's like, like why bother? So I encourage you to start playing with this. And the interesting thing is you can take any two experiences and begin to contrast them and play with the submodalities and really shift your experience of something. And for me, this was a great kind of revelation of some of the NLP work. Is, like I said, I was doing this sort of mental experiment before learning NLP. But in NLP, it's like very explicit, like, oh, this is a way of looking at that difference and manipulating it very directly. I also noticed that with the lobster thing, I wasn't keeping that picture up in my mind all the time. Whereas with the dumplings, it was almost like, you know, when you hang a stick, and I was hanging the dumplings right in front of me, so I was constantly chasing them. But with the lobster, I just put it out of my mind, you know, so it wasn't bothering me. Another example of this was even years prior to this, I realized that I had to stop eating sugar because sugar was making my blood sugar kind of wild. So it was like I decided, and I just stopped on a dime. And this is one of the rare times in my life where I kind of had to make a decision. I made a decision, and I just changed it immediately. And up until that point, I had been a big fan of sugar. I loved desserts. I loved all these things, and kind of like the dumplings, I would think about them a lot. But when I realized how much it was affecting my energy level, I just immediately, I made a choice, like, I don't want that. So it was really interesting because immediately all the pictures sort of changed for me. And what I realized that I did, I didn't do this intentionally, it just happened. Instead of keeping this close, three-dimensional, rich picture that I could smell and taste of all the different sweets that I wanted, immediately all the pictures kind of turned into almost like plastic, like when you go to a sushi restaurant and they have plastic sushi in the window. Plastic sushi looks interesting, but it's not, you know, it doesn't make me want to eat sushi. So all of a sudden, you know, all my pictures of brownies turn into plastic brownies, and immediately it wasn't like I had to control myself, because I'm not drawn to eat a plastic brownie at all, or plastic, any, name your dessert. So yeah, so it's amazing how you can begin to really curate your own experience by shifting these different submodalities, and you can take one experience and, just as an experiment, shift it into another, and then shift it back. I also just like taking something, again, just like the dumplings, and see how can I make myself want it more, and how can I make myself want it less. And you'll notice, again, I'm gesturing. So for me, if I bring it closer, it's like, oh, I really want that now. And then if I push it off, for me, that makes me not want it quite as much. For other people, it might be making the picture really big will make you want it more. And or to make it less, for some people, if you make it a black and white picture, like if I make a black and white picture of dumplings, like in an old newspaper, I'm not so drawn to them in the same way. So I encourage you to play with that, and hope you have some fun with it.